Welcome to Balanced Life with Debbie Carlin Boyle. Conversations connecting to a healthier you. The show that gives you all the latest and greatest health and wellness information to inspire you to live a life of balance and joy. Debbie Carlin Boyle is a health and nutrition coach, personal trainer, and fitness instructor who helps her clients live in balance with everything that feeds us, in addition to the food on our plate. Please welcome your host, Debbie Carlin Boyle.
Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to my show. You are here with me. This is Balanced Life with me, your host, Debbie Carlin Boyle, and this is Conversations that Connect to a Healthier You. And thank you for joining us on this hot summer last day of July, last Tuesday of July. I'm so glad that you joined us. Have a good conversation about something near and dear to my heart, which happens to be movement exercise. So if you're here, you're probably interested in listening to an expert in some of these things. And I want to let you know that if you have a question, you can call in. So if you're not driving, take this number down. The number here is 323-524-2599. One more time, area code 323-524-2599. We want you to become part of the conversation. You might want to make a comment or let us know what's working for you, what didn't work for you. And that way you become part of the conversation and you get some answers from some experts right in real time. So we'd love to have you join us. If you are not watching live, or you are and you can't call, you can go where I'm streaming live right now on my Facebook page, Balanced Life by Debbie, DEBI.com. That's my website, or DEBI Facebook. Or you could go to my YouTube channel where you can go into the comment section and ask a question or make a comment. I check during the show so we can answer live on the show. And if I miss it, we'll answer you right after the show. So you still are becoming part of the conversation. And it doesn't matter when you catch this episode. If you want to be part of it, chime in, go onto the comment section, ask a comment, ask a question, make a comment, tell us what is or is not working for you, and myself or my guests will get right back to you. So that's how I designed this show. I curated it to be like that, to keep the conversations with you, the audience, not just the guest and the experts. So I also want to tell you a little bit about me before we get rolling. I am a personal trainer, a fitness instructor, and a health and nutrition coach. And I basically help people find balance with everything in life besides exercise and nutrition. There is a whole balanced let's say, bullet points of things that we need in order to seek alignment. And we figure out what's going on in your life that may be taking you down several steps, 1, 2, maybe more, and keeping you from finding your joy, your happiness, because it's all about longevity with quality. And we're going to try to move things up the totem pole to come into balance so you can live that life that you have in your mind and reach your goals and age young. So to get a hold of me, you would go to my Facebook page. And my Facebook page this time is Balanced Life by Debbie, again, DEBI.com. And when you go there, you're going to see a pop-up. It is a summer detox program. And when I say program, I mean 3 days. And there's breakfast, lunch, and dinner for you. And the recipes are curated to make you feel lighter on your feet and to kind of give you a jump start into these summer months and help you eat healthy, eat the foods that satiate and also nourish you and give you the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that your body craves. So it's easy, simple. There's market lists there. So go check it out, say hi to me, and let's get you going on to a life of longevity with quality. So I'm ready to let you know what we're doing today, and I'm so glad once again that you're joining us. So as a personal trainer myself, I know how important it is to design workouts to help my clients meet their genetic potential. It is not necessarily a one-size-fits-all thing. Designing training programs for athletes and individuals is the specialty of my guest today. Eric Degatti has spent the past 20 plus years in the fitness industry as a coach, a trainer, and instructor. Each year, Eric travels around the world teaching and speaking to trainers, coaches, and therapists as a lead instructor for functional movement systems and guest speaker for such prestigious organizations as Mount Sinai Hospital, New York University, the Navy SEALs, the Mayo Clinic, and multiple major universities. His list of training clients includes individuals who have been on Olympic gold medalist teams, All-Americans, national champions, World Series champions, and Pro Bowl athletes. He also works with many high-level sports teams at the high school to professional ranks. His latest project, Diamond Revolution Training, is an online training platform for baseball and softball athletes, as well as the principles of program design, an educational workshop series, and coaching service for trainers and clinicians on the art of science and designing training programs. So let's dig into all things optimal performance when it comes to fitness. Will you please welcome Eric Degatti to the show?
Thanks for having me, Debbie.
Hi, Eric. Welcome. We got a good audience here listening. They're hidden, but they're here to us today. Thanks for joining me. I know Eric is coming to us from the East Coast in New York. And so, of course, your live time is 3 hours ahead. So we're getting into the end of day and also into the happy hour, dinner hour. So I thank you for your time today. So you have a really impressive list of credits and background the things that you are doing for trainers, coaches, teams, individuals, groups. It's really impressive. So I want to hear a little bit about you first and hear your story and your background, even from a young age, where you were born, grew up, education, and kind of what led you to do what you do today, why you're doing what you do. Because the stories are what really resonate, I realize, with people. And everybody's got a story, which is one of the things I love about this show. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am going on year number 25 in the fitness industry. And so over that time, I've had some good fortune, as you said, to work in a lot of different unique areas. And I'd like to say I had this master plan when I started out, but I really didn't. I knew that I was looking to do something in this arena with fitness and wellness and health, and a couple things drove me to it. One, from a personal side, is I dealt with some pretty bad back pain in my early 20s. I was sleeping on the floor for about 6 months, and that was just out of pure stubbornness. And then finally, my mom convinced me to go to the doctor, and I, waited in the waiting room for hours to go into another room to wait for another hour to have a doctor look at me and say, well, could be anything. And I said, really? That's the best answer I can get after all this time? And so I said, you know what? I'm going to the gym and I'm just going to work out. And I had no idea what I was doing. I just went and I looked at every machine or exercise that worked anything close to my back. And I just did it, and my back pain went away. And then I started getting into it, and then said, well, if I'm going to invest this much time into this, I want to learn it. And so studied exercise science and went and got certified, and then just got the bug where I just studied anything and everything that had to do with fitness, performance, wellness on that side of things. And always being someone who grew up playing sports, I wanted to be able to connect the dots with those. And then as I started to learn more and more, got to work with a lot of the athletes in my area in different sports, primarily in football and baseball, because those were the two main sports that I played. And then from there, got opportunities to not only work with a bunch of individual athletes, but I was a consultant for the New York Giants for 9 years, where we won 2 Super Bowls during that time. And then also, while this was happening, I owned my own training facility for 12 years, where we had a multidisciplinary center that had everything from physical therapy and chiropractic care and massage therapy to group fitness classes and personal training and sports performance training. And then also along the way, because I was always fascinated on the education side of things and kind of grooming and mentoring young trainers, I got to meet some brilliant people that became mentors, in Gray Cook and Lee Burton, who started functional movement systems in the FMS screen. And early on in the beginning years of that company, I got to be one of their lead instructors. And now I'm going on, I think it's maybe 18 years teaching for them all over the world, as well as developing my own curriculum of education for trainers and coaches that I go out and teach, and teaching them, as you said, teaching them how to write programs. And I'm sure we're going to get into this in some of our conversations, in getting them to understand the big difference between what a program is and what a workout is, and what some of our obligations are as professionals to better serve the public, because the perception of what fitness is and what we do as trainers is not very good, unfortunately, and we're trying to change that.
Yeah, I like that, because that's very true. And I've been a little longer than you. I've been in the business, but not so concentrated as you. I've been in the business about going on 30 years, and I started cardio stuff. So I started as a spin instructor, which led me, and I was doing my own workouts in the gym, and then people from my class would come up and ask me to train them, and I wasn't qualified. So that's what threw me into the personal training realm. And I went through a program that was really tedious. It was a 3-month program to become a trainer, and it was in a gym by a former bodybuilder, a guy by the name of Bill Cunningham, Irish man. He was, at the time, he was in his early 70s, but he was an Arnold Schwarzenegger type, that just, he had won many competitions over the years, and he understood body mechanics, and he understood functional movement, and he understood physiology. And so we had the practical course, the book part of it, in a big conference room. And it was a 3-day-a-week thing. It was, I remember, it was like Tuesday, Thursday nights, and then all day Saturday. And then we had the practical part of it, which was actually in the gym. So we had to demonstrate. So we weren't just writing out programs that we, once we heard a scenario of a client, we were actually implementing them and using the other students as our guinea pigs, our client. And it really gave me a great, strong foundation to go through the fundamentals like that, and not just read it on. 30 years ago, you couldn't do a course online, So this was really, it was 1996. So it wasn't quite 30 years ago that I did that. But nonetheless, it was still, you couldn't do it online. We did that. We got down and dirty, the nitty gritty stuff of it. And that's what I like. And I find, being in gyms for all these years, that a lot of trainers don't have that fundamental. But the trainers that sent me to this guy said, this is where you go. This is how it happens, called the American Academy of Body Sculpting. Since it's still going, but obviously he's not doing it anymore. But he's still around, and he's still lifting, and he still looks great. So and so that's why there's a strong need and an appreciation for who you are and what you do. But let's, where in New York are you located? I'm just curious.
Technically in New Jersey. I joke, I'm in northern New Jersey. I'm anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours outside of Manhattan, depending on traffic.
Oh, yeah, I get that. Yeah, I'm here at Burbank Studios. Same thing, 30 minutes or 3 hours for me to get to Warner Brothers. So yeah, it just depends. It just depends. LA, New York, you know how that is. So, and you were born there. Is that where you were born and raised?
Yes.
And so you were a kid who played sports, and that's where this all stemmed from. But let's get to, let's talk about functional movement and what the definition, like, just start from the beginning. Most people that are listening to my show are health enthusiasts. They're people who want to know more about diet, exercise, lifestyle choices that are going to give them good self-care and longevity. So when it comes to movement, what do we mean? What do you mean when we say functional movement?
Well, unfortunately, it's a term that kind of got dragged through the dirt a little bit in the last couple of years in the industry, because as most things do in fitness, it goes in waves of popularity. And when I started in the late 90s, everything was kind of bashing the old school bodybuilding type of training and was moving towards more quote unquote functional training. But we didn't necessarily have a definition of what that meant. It was just doing things different than we had done them previously. And so when you boil it down, really what we're looking at is there are certain things you're going to ask of your body to do, whether it's going about your daily activities or whether it's you're performing in a sport or you need them for your occupation. Those functions, you require certain ranges of motion, certain positions and shapes and patterns that you need to be able to achieve in order to do that successfully. Now, it doesn't mean you can't do them if you don't have those prerequisites. It just means you're going to make them up from someplace else. And so if I don't have enough ankle or hip mobility to get into a full squat to get something out of the bottom cabinet, I'll still be able to get there, but I'm going to do it at the cost of something else. And so part of what we like to do is to make sure that people can go through and make and not have those barriers. And those barriers to whether it's acquiring a skill, you want to learn how to play tennis or pickleball or something like that, and your body does not allow you to get into the positions that you need to. Or it is a restriction if, let's say, you even want to just gain greater fitness and that you want to do certain exercises, but you don't have either the mobility or the stability and control to get into the positions to even execute the exercise. So that's kind of the foundation of what that is. The other piece of it is we usually take movement and box it in with exercise, and you kind of associate everything with that. Well, movement is what we do to get up and down the stairs. It's what we do to go brush our teeth or make dinner or do any of the things we do throughout the day, but we don't necessarily count that as exercise. And so I think because we've created these silos, we don't appreciate movement as an everyday thing and how one will feed the other. And so I get people to try to understand that movement doesn't just happen when you walk into a gym with shiny equipment and blinking lights and so forth. That movement is what you do from the second you open your eyes until you close them again at night. And it is really what differentiates us from other species is our movement and our ability to continue to do that.
Right. Oh, very well said. And it is, I think there's certain things we take for granted, and sometimes you don't realize how limiting, how you take it for granted until something's taken away from you, until your knees aren't working, your hips aren't working, your shoulders aren't working, and then you realize how much we need the mobility, we need the flexibility, we need to be able to do these things, and they're only going to get worse and atrophy if we don't listen to the call of them. So I think you're absolutely right that we for a while, especially when you're young and everything's functioning, unless you have an injury, everything usually functions very well, and then as we get older, we sort of learn the mistakes we made when we were younger, right? I was a tennis player throughout my 20s, 30s, and 40s. I don't have knees now. And I was a runner because I would run on the same day I would play tennis. I ran every single day, 6 miles a day. That was my thing from my early 30s all the way. Besides, and that's how I was drawn to cycling, was because my knees got destroyed at a young age. So that's how I got started in spin when it became a craze. And then you start to age and you start to see, not only do we slow down for many reasons, but we start to see these little things start creeping in that we always took for granted, and yet I once again have always had that goal that I could squat down and pick up my grandchild well into my 80s and 90s. And I knew I had to start backwards for that. I had to start at an early age, but it kind of screwed things up when I was younger. So I think no matter what age you're at, if you need to get educated on movement, because I see so many young, even teenagers, 20-somethings, overdoing it in one thing, not paying attention, and I just know later on in life what's going to happen. So, and that's, when I start getting clients is when they have limitations and they're frustrated by it. I'm sure you see that all the time. Don't you see that? with your clients?
So everything I do works off of checklists. And you'll see as we go through our conversation today, everything I have goes back to a checklist somewhere, somehow. And the reason why I like checklists is, and I use this analogy, is that if you run to the supermarket because you need something, but you don't bring a list, you end up coming home with like 3 jars of olives that you're never going to eat, and you forget to buy the thing you actually went to the store for. Where a good program, what that does is serves as a checklist. Now let's talk about movement as an example and talk about how we learn about movement. No one had to learn how to move. It's innate within our software. It's called our neurodevelopmental system. And over the first 21 months of our life, we learn how to track with our eyes. We learn to lift our heads. We learn to press ourselves up. We learn to roll from our backs to our stomachs. We learn to start to crawl. We learn to get up into transitional postures like kneeling. We learn to stand and balance and then walk. And then from there, we develop skills on top of that, from carrying to climbing to jumping and walking and all these things. And we actually had a checklist that anybody who's had kids knows, that you go to the pediatrician, and at certain landmarks along that continuum, they want to make sure, are they sitting up on their own? Okay. Are they grasping things? Are they doing these sorts of things? And that way they make sure that there's not any flaws in that developmental sequence. And then once you get to about 2 years old, we forget about it. And then we spend the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years just screwing it up and giving it back away. And so basically what we look to do is to have a checklist to say, okay, well, can you at least maintain a minimum level of these movements so it doesn't become a barrier for you throughout your day? And so with that, we don't want to necessarily look into it in terms of parts, because that's what really fitness has become. Is if I, had $100 for every time somebody said, well, what does this work, and want me to point to a body part and give them a Latin name, I'd be a very, very rich man, because that's how we've been trained to do it. It's been biased in bodybuilding and physical therapy to say every exercise has to work a very specific part. And that's not necessarily how our systems work. And by looking at it just in terms of parts, we end up missing a lot of things. And so we want to look at it more in terms of movement. So to say, well, someone hears what you say that and say, oh my gosh, I better not run because I'm going to have bad knees like Debbie. Well, there's people in Kenya who run hundreds and hundreds of miles and never had bad knees. And yet there's people who were like my grandmother, who wasn't active at all. She ran a gift shop, and yet she had multiple knee replacements because no one had an answer for her. Meanwhile, it's usually not your knees that are the problem. If you lack ankle mobility and you don't have the ability to freely move through your ankle, or you don't have immobility in your hip, that's going to cause additional stress on your knee, whether you're running or not running. And so we want to take a more holistic view when it comes to movement and say, do you at least have the prerequisite ranges of motion and stability and control that you need of your own body? And then let's worry about how we put extra stress in it, whether it's going for a run or lifting weights or doing yoga or whatever we decide is our activity.
I love that. I love that. Taking that holistic approach, and things, like laying in the sun when I was younger, things you wish you knew then that you know now that would make a difference now, and that's true with movement. That was so well said. If everybody could take that education from an early point and see, we could avoid so many things. I want to get into, because you have the 3 big things that we talk about from optimal fitness, wellness, and performance. I want to break it down. We're going to take a quick break from one of my sponsors, and when we come back, let's break it down so anybody who's watching us or listening can actually implement. And we'll be right back.
Let's do it.
We'll be right back after this. Cicera Olio de Oliva is an extra virgin olive oil company with a mission to provide high-quality, current-season Italian oils to families. They have partnered with 2 centuries-old family farms in the Tuscany region of Italy to grow, harvest, and bottle their amazing oils. Founded by a nutritionist who has a love of the land, sustainability, nutritious foods, and, of course, Italy, they strive for a peak freshness and high nutritional content in every single bottle. All of their oils are current season, extra virgin olive oil, bringing you a true branch to bottle experience, and I know firsthand. So, for an offer, go to www.cesiraolio.com liva.com and enter Balanced Life 10 for 10% off. I know you're going to love this healthy and delicious addition to just about any meal. Hello, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. If you are just joining us, we're talking all about insights to optimal fitness, performance, and wellness with my expert, Eric Degatti here. And we're really excited to have him because we're going to break it down right now. Eric's got what he calls his 3 big things. And I'm sure if you're listening, you can gain some insight that's going to help you. I mean, first of all, movement is super important. So I'm assuming most of my audience does exercise in some way, shape, or form. And if you don't, you should move daily. So we can talk about that. But what are the 3 big things, Eric, that we should know?
So I came up with this concept based on that everybody always asks for this magic bullet. They want to know what supplement should I take? What's the magic exercise? What's the magic workout? And it's not that. I tell them to take a step back. Let's take the 10,000 foot view and let's go through a checklist. And I always try to do my checklist in groups of 3. So it's easy for them to remember. So the 3 big things in terms of the big umbrella things. And then underneath each one of these, there's just a continual list of 3 more things underneath each subcategory. So the 3 big things are move. All right. We've talked about that. It's fuel and it's reset. Okay, so now let's break down each one a little bit more into 3 more subcategories. So when it comes to move, right, there's 3 subcategories of that. There's movement, meaning just human movement. How well do you move? Can you touch your toes? Can you reach back and extend? Can you reach behind you to put on a shirt or something like that? Can you squat down? Can you drop it down onto a knee and get back up in a lunge position? Can you balance on a single leg? These are the sorts of things that we want to look at in terms of how well you move, and make sure we check that box. Make sure you can do the daily activities that you need to do, whether it's your things that you do from day to day, whether it's part of your occupation or part of your sport. The second piece of that is looking at strength. And this is something that's been always thought of as kind of the meathead type of thing and lifting weights and so forth. And nothing could be further than the truth that there's research that actually shows one of the highest correlations with mortality is your grip strength. Okay. So strength is incredibly important, especially as we age and maintaining muscle mass. So strength is an important thing. It doesn't mean you need to go and bench press a ton of weight. It means you need to be able to be strong enough to withstand whatever stressors that are presented to you from day to day.
So I'm going to interrupt in there really quick.
Go ahead.
Grip strength. What does one do to gain? It's a more overall thing that we have to do, because it's not just like squeezing a ball or doing.
Great point. And so it's not yet. You can go out and get your gripper, things off the internet and squeeze them all day as you're driving, but that's not what it's looking at. It's more of an expression of what it represents. It represents how robust you are, and the people who are more robust, when they don't fall as much, and when they do fall, they can handle the fall better. And so those are the types of things why it connects, and it's an expression of your vitality. The last piece is your capacity, and that's how long you can keep doing things. Do you get out of breath going up and down the stairs? Can you go for a walk without getting tired? So we have to look at capacity. So we have those 3 things all kind of the umbrella of movement, of how your movement quality and your competency in that, your strength and being able to express force, and then your capacity of how long you can keep doing it. So that all kind of falls under the umbrella of move. Then you have fuel, and that's kind of what we're putting into our bodies. You have your hydration and making sure that box is checked. And that means more than just drinking water, but making sure that you're getting enough, making sure that you have a balance, and then making sure you're not wasting that hydration on high sugar juices and sodas and that sort of stuff.
That's not hydrating.
The second piece of fuel is the obvious. That's nutrients, and the better quality, the more quality in, the more quality out. And obviously the verse is true, as they say in technology, garbage in, garbage out. So the nutrients. But the other piece that people don't realize is the fuel of what you let into your eyes and ears, and how that's going to impact your thoughts, how it's going to affect your beliefs and your preferences and those sorts of things. So obviously with social media, that can be something that can be a huge drain. And there's tons of studies and documentaries about the stress that social media can then bring, but also just 24-hour news cycles and those things that you're constantly letting in. And so you're affected by the people that you're around, the books that you read, the TV you watch. And so that fuel is just as important as the food we eat and the fluids that we drink. And so that all goes under the subcategory of fuel.
I've never heard it put as, sort of using as fuel for the way you absorb your thoughts and what you see and what you hear, as, the top heading has fuel. And yet it's so perfect. It's perfect. It's a perfect word for we need to be cognizant of what we're allowing in to our minds, and that's fueling our brain. I really never heard it that way. I love that. I love the way you put that.
And if you think about when people want to feel good, Debbie, like who's ever gone for a nice long walk and come back and said, wow, I should have never done that. I feel like crap now.
Nobody.
Right? It doesn't happen. But how many times have you watched the news or scrolled your Twitter feed and said, oh, I feel so much better. That was great.
Hardly
so
ever.
Like if you think about that, like those inputs are happening every day. And the beauty of that is, for the most part, we have a choice in how we decide those things. So
yes.
A lot of it comes down to your habits and what I call your non-negotiable habits. And that comes also back to a bigger umbrella of that I tell my clients is that you get what you tolerate. And you've kind of set the bar for yourself to say, I am not going to tolerate being someone who's not going to be vital into my 90s, that can't pick up my grandchild. And that's the bar you've set. A lot of people settle for a very low bar. And yes. So unfortunately, that's why they settle for being where they are. And because they're either afraid to make that change, or they're too tied to that narrative that I'm not a gym, quote unquote, gym person, or I'm not a quote unquote health nut. And so that changing that narrative and that mindset is incredibly important. And that can't be done if you're getting, constant input telling you the opposite.
I agree with you.
So that's why the fuel's so
much.
Important.
Yeah, I agree with you. And because we're being fed, literally being fed things that harm us. And so you have to be willing to, if you grew up eating junk food and you want to continue to do that, you're going to have not such a good outcome going down the line. If you want to make that change, that's a mindset thing that you have to be willing to do. And that's where people like you and I come in. We're coaches, because we can make sense of it and have them do those small little, like you said, each action step has another subset and step under it. And then they can understand from the inside out the holistic approach to lifestyle changes that don't happen overnight but are very doable, and it's never too late. And for you to put it that way makes so much sense. And it's really, the ball is in our court when it comes to how we want to see our future and have it play out. You've got to be willing to make the changes. But like I said, do you ever see a commercial for a health food product? Never. We're getting sugary soft drinks, we're getting junk food, we're getting fast food places, we're getting cereals and things that are loaded with chemicals and processed food. Those are the kind of commercials that are being alcohol. Those are what's being thrown at us. Nothing really healthy is, unless you're a health practitioner and really searching online or your social media feed is that, you're not going to get those kind of things stimulating you to want to do them. You're going to be enticed by advertising to go out and do the things that are harming you. And you have to make the choice to shift the mindset and the physical actions to make the change. So I love the way you put that about fuel. I love it.
The only downside to that, Debbie, is even if you do follow health on social media, it's not what the stuff that really makes an impact and lasting change is not all that sexy and doesn't get clicks, right? So when, if you want to follow what a 20-something with a six-pack does, you can try it for a little while, but it's not going to last, and it's not going to make you look like them. And so that's the only kind of asterisk I would put onto that. And so a lot of this is actually just getting people, and that's why I came up with these checklists, is to get people to kind of to realize where their blind spots are. and say, okay, well, what is your biggest weak spot? And let's start with that. And I'll tell you a cool story I actually had with a client this morning. But first, I want to get to the last thing, which is reset. And people forget about this. And so I explain day one when I meet with someone, I say, okay, when we work out, do we build up or break down? And you got a 50-50 shot. And they say, well, build up. And I said, try again. I say, break down. I said, the whole reason this exercise thing works is it's stress. It's a good stress. But basically what happens if you go out and challenge yourself, your body says, oh my gosh, I don't know what you just did. But in order to keep doing that, I'm going to have to change somehow. So if you keep lifting those heavy things, I'm going to have to build some muscle and build some neural pathways so I can get stronger. If you're going to keep going out for that run, I'm going to have to build more oxidation and more, blood flow to those tissues so I can keep doing that. So it's in our whole system, and every cell in our body is built for efficiency so we can survive another day and adapt to these stresses. And so that's how we get better. But the magic's not happening when we're in the gym. All we're doing is, I use the analogy, we're just planting the seeds, and I'm just the farmer just telling you where and when to plant them. And ultimately you have to give me fertile soil to work with. And so I can give you the greatest workout in the world, but if you stay up all night and you're eating junk and you're stressed out, that workout's not going to produce the results that we need. And so you need to have the reset, because that's what allows that soil, that those seeds to grow. And so the 3 components of reset is, number 1, sleep, which has been very underrated and sometimes even knocked, in that it's almost a badge of courage if I get less sleep, when it's actually quite the opposite. And sleep connects everything from in longevity to a huge connection with things like neurodegeneration and things like Alzheimer's, and to even performance. I tell my athletes, once you get less than at least 6 hours sleep, if not more, your reaction time goes down. Then you look at adaptability, and most of us are not very resilient and adaptable. Most humans right now can only really exist in 72 degrees and in wall-to-wall carpet. They can't really handle if it's hot. They can't really handle if it's cold. They can't handle if they go a couple hours without eating something or have something. So we're not very resilient in terms of our adaptability. So we need to be able to adapt to whatever our environment throws at us. And then the last piece is just quiet. There's one of my favorite authors is Ryan Holiday, and he has an entire book on on being able to be quiet, right? And being able to kind of, whether that's meditation, whether it's just deep breathing, whether it's something where you can tune out the noise, because eventually it's going to burn you out, because we have so many things coming at you. And if we're really going to reset, we need to have some quiet in there. And so that's kind of our next level checklist. And I can keep going down and down from there, because quiet could break down into quiet could break down into in the physical quiet. Yeah. Do you have pain or do you not have pain? Pain is noise in terms of your body. Do you have quiet in terms of your physiology? That's disease. Do you have any of that going on? Quiet is in terms of, your mental, your beliefs, and your things that are holding you back from different thought systems that you kind of stick to. So that, we can keep going down the rabbit holes with that.
No, I love it. I love it. No, you were talking about, I know I punched in there, hormesis, and putting our body into a state of maybe something that doesn't feel comfortable at the moment, but that's how we change, and that's how our body adapts. And adaptability is what we need big time to adapt to cold. So that's what the cold plunges are for. I take hot yoga, so I'm adapting to heat and movement at the same time. I'm putting my body in a state of sort of almost a fight or flight state, but not in the kind of high cortisol state that because of my nervous system, or I've overtaxed my adrenals, but I'm actually putting it in a place of survival. So I'm able to take it up a notch, and you do it gradually. Again, it's a step-by-step thing. It's not one cold plunge. Yes, is a good thing, but it's something that you should think about to do on a regular basis. And I do hot yoga at least, and this was all because I did have limited movement. I couldn't balance on one leg, 2 or 3 years ago. Now I can. I'm in my late 60s. This is something that will be part of my life as long as I can make that happen. But it's putting my body in a state where it's working a little bit harder, which is the same thing, breaking down when you push heavy weight, something we know creates longevity. and allowing me to do it again the next day, and it's a little bit easier. So I challenge myself again, and that's, it's just incremental, it's steps. I love that. I love what you were saying. I think it's makes so much sense, and it's so vital that we all should be paying attention to that.
And the elegance of what you're talking about, whether it's a cold plunge or the sauna or a HIIT workout or lifting some weights, those are relatively short, specifically dosed exposures to those stressors. Okay. And they're by your own choice. And so that also makes it a little bit easier. And then with that, understand that the magic is not happening there. It's happening after that. And that's why the reset is important. And so that's how we build resiliency in strength. And so we also have to look at that in the scheme of everything. I alluded to earlier a situation with my client this morning, and sometimes it's just being able to step back. He came in, he's been dealing with some back pain. And so I kind of said, let's zoom out for a minute. And I used a chart that I got from Dr. Andy Galpin, who's a brilliant researcher in exercise science, one of the leaders in our field. And basically he gives you 4 quadrants. And he says, okay, you have your work and your business is 1. You have your family and friends is 2. You have your health and fitness is 3. And then your recovery is 4. You have 10 points, and you can allot whatever score you want to each quadrant, but you only have a budget of 10 points. And so as we started going through, he said, well, work is like 4, maybe 5. And he said, well, family, I'd like to think is a 3. And I said, well, there's not a lot of left here. And he said, well, I guess I got to give 2 to fitness and 1 to recovery. And I said, well, that's why you're not bouncing back, is you're putting yourself through a whole lot, but you don't have a lot of a budget to work with. And so that was the realization to say, wow, now I kind of see where I'm at. And so it's the realization I'm not broken. It's the realization there's not something wrong with me. It's just that I'm not budgeting my money well. If I went out and went to the mall and just went with the credit cards and went crazy and got a whole bunch of stuff, and then I can't figure out why I'm broke at the end of the month, it's not something wrong with me. It's that I made some bad choices. I didn't have the right habits that I needed to get to where I wanted to be if I wanted to attain some level of wealth. And so the same thing goes for your body. You have to understand the repercussions of your choices, both positive and negative, and not get caught into the situation where I'm either fit or I'm not fit. I'm healthy or I'm broken. No, it's not that simple. It's not that black and white.
Yeah, it breaks down much smaller. That's kind of why I call my business Balanced Life, because one of the things, not so concentrated as what you were just saying you did with your client, but with my health coaching clients, and all of my personal training clients are health coaching clients too, because of course I'm coaching them on all these other self-care things in their life. I have what I call the circle of life. And, it's things like finances, sleep, creativity, career. It's all the things that we need, to find balance. And I make them put dots on where they're at. So if you're low towards the bullseye, let's say that your finances aren't doing well, but your exercise is here and your creativity is here. And so those are out. They get a visual of the circle when they connect the dots, what needs to be come up back into balance. And it's for them to see how it breaks down, because everybody has that way. They don't take the time, like you just did with your client, to see the why. Why is this not working? Why is this happening? Why does my body feel this way? This is a way for them to get a visual. And most people are visual. So that's why I love that you did that. That's very cool. In the time we have left, which is basically about 6 minutes, I wanna break down let's just talk about somebody who wants to begin, and get started with movement, because all of the things we've been talking about could happen to them as they age. It may not be happening now, but they want to make a change. What's the very first thing someone should do? Should they get started?
Okay, so the first thing is get the right mindset, is that the whole no pain, no gain thing is nonsense. Nothing should hurt, right? So if something does hurt when you go to move, There's a couple of reasons for that. It could be that you just don't have the movement capacity that I talked about earlier to be able to do that. And in that case, you got to get that figured out. You need to find a professional who can figure out why your knee hurts when you go for a walk. The other thing with the no pain, no gain is that this is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and that nothing changes from one set or one workout or one day. It's the accumulation of everything over time. And so what we need to look at is that you want to be right where we call the edge of your ability, and where you're right between two places where you're challenged but you're successful. Challenged because that's, as we said already, that's what makes you change. Successful meaning that, let's say you're going to lift a weight and you're going to try to do 10 repetitions. If you can only get to 8 repetitions and then your form falls apart or you can't get it, well, then you weren't really successful. You weren't able to complete that. So you need to be right at that edge of your ability where you can do just what you want to do, and it's challenging, but it doesn't kill you. And that you shouldn't wake up the next day where you can't walk up and down the stairs and get up in and out of your chair. That's not what good training and good exercise should feel like. It should build you. It should, you can feel like you've done something, but it shouldn't break you down. That's this whole misconception that that's what it should feel like, that you just have to beat yourself into submission every single workout. Then, like I said, you need to have a robust profile of what you're looking to do. You need to have some strength work in there. I recommend at least 2 days per week of strength work. It doesn't take a lot. You don't have to go out and be a bodybuilder or a power lifter, but just some level of strength work that's going to challenge your main patterns of movement in your major muscle groups. You want to make sure that you have good fluid movement and mobility. So anything from just a beginner yoga class to Tai Chi or things like that, or even just walking kind of can help and aid in that. And then with your capacity, we want to make sure that we work on all ends. We want to make sure, and this is a big mistake that people make when we talk about challenge, is that very few people can get on a 0 to 10 scale. Very few people can get to 8 or higher, and very few people ever let themselves get to below 5. And so we diet what Tim Ferriss, who I actually got to meet and was in his book 4 Hour Body. Mm-hmm. He says we kind of all diet this simmering 6, where we just never get the capacity to really push ourselves and do that cold plunge or do that high intensity work or sprint or lift a heavier weight, to where we get to where we're working like an 8 out of 10. But we also need to be able to work down in that 1 or 2 range. Not everything has to be, where it's this unbelievable, pedal to the metal thing. You can go out for a walk. And when you do, I highly encourage you only breathe through your nose. Go out for a walk and do that 2-3 times a week. And then once or twice a week, try to push it a little bit more, maybe jog or go take a great spin class or dance class or something that's going to push you a little bit. And you could feel your heart beating and you're going to huff and puff some, and then add that into your strength and movement work. And you've got a pretty robust profile of movement. And it doesn't have to feel confined to where I'm doing the same exercises for 3 sets of 10 on these confined machines for the rest of my life, because quite frankly, it's boring to most people. So you need to find things that are engaging and fun. And that's kind of the beauty of blending functional movement and blending it with your everyday activities.
I have to agree with you wholeheartedly. I have a question, or maybe just a thought. But so I teach sculpting classes, and knowing that, not everybody can afford a one-on-one personal trainer. And so, you just alluded to, and you talked about all these different kind of classes people can take. When it comes to body conditioning sculpting classes, I teach spin. That's a different thing. That's where people come to get stronger in endurance and cardio capacity. But when it comes to sculpting classes, since it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing, do you recommend, or how do you feel about body conditioning classes where you may have a class of 25 people and they're all at different levels, yet you've got to create a class that everybody can somehow modify or figure out their way to do that movement? How do you think someone like me, an instructor, should go about that when I'm formulating my class for the day?
So there's 2 parts of that. There's the as the leader of that type of scenario, knowing the art of progression and regression. We have an entire course that we teach that just kind of understanding how to progress and regress any of the movement patterns. And we actually use a belt system, we call it. And we kind of steal that from the martial arts where, how do you know what to do if you walk into a martial arts dojo? I don't just get to jump in with the black belts and start sparring. I get tested to see where I should be. And there's a colored belt that tells me right where I've kind of earned the right to be. And that's kind of where we scale exercises to say, okay, well, if this person can't do this, well, then we can back it off to this. And if they still can't do that, then we can back it off even more to where we can change things where maybe if they're doing something unsupported, they can regress to do something where they're supported and they can hold on to something, or something that's more static where they don't have to necessarily go up and down or back and forth, but they're just holding a position. So that's kind of the art of progression and regressioning, learning how to do that on the fly. And then the biggest thing, and if you haven't picked up, I like people to take ownership of their movement, of their health. And so one of the things that when I had my facility is we would do movement screenings on people when they came in, and we didn't necessarily do personal training with all these people and give them individualized programs. But what we did is made them aware to say, okay, well, you don't really hinge at your hips real well. And what does that mean? That means when you go to touch your toes, you can't quite get there. It means that anything that you do kind of reaching below your hips could, add some additional potential risk. So if you get into that class and they ask you to maybe do a deadlift, or they ask you to try to do a kettlebell swing or one of those things, that's probably not right for you. And it's not because the exercise is bad or the instructor is wrong. It's because just your body doesn't go there. Now you have two options. One would be obviously if we could find a way to fix it, and you invest a little bit of time, and you don't have to train with this person for 3 days a week for the rest of your life, but get a couple sessions with a professional who can correct that issue and teach you how to fix yourself. And then the second piece is, until that's fixed, just don't do those movements, right? Because we don't want to make it worse. We don't want to layer fitness on top of dysfunction. And so for the time being, understanding what are my limitations to say, okay, well, I don't have really good shoulder mobility, so I'm going to avoid those overhead presses. Debbie, do you have an alternate I can do instead? Sure. I'm going to have you do a plank while everybody else is doing the press.
Right.
And you can still be doing a workout and you don't have to feel broken. You're just going to do an alternative to what everybody else is going to be doing.
Right. I love that. Yeah. Modifications. I do that a lot. And I have people, I usually go around and meet people in the class if I don't already know them, and get a really quick, because when I'm health coaching people, they fill out a form so I can see what their issues have been in their lifestyle. But when someone walks in my class cold, I don't know, and sometimes they tell me after class, oh, by the way, I didn't do this. And then I have to say, oh, I figured, or I'll walk over to them and talk to them during class and, make that modification. So thank you for that. Well, we've come to it. We've come to the end. So what I want to do is let people know how they can reach you, what all of your contacts are, and anything that you have coming up that you want to just give some information before we get going.
Sure. Well, thank you. The best way, if anybody has any interest in reaching out to me or even has questions, because I do a lot of these things and I go out and I speak at a lot of conferences, I put something on the cover on the homepage of my website called Ask Eric, where it's a question box where you can just put in any questions that you have, and that goes directly to my email, and you can get back and forth with me there, in addition to the other ways you can do it through the show that you listed. Something that I've also added in the last year or so that I haven't really launched publicly. I'm using it for my existing clients that come to me by referral, but that I'm going to be launching in the coming months, is I have an app that I created where it allows me to scale, where normally the only way you got to see me is by referral only, and I only have a very limited availability to see clients. So what the app allows me to do is work with more people, and not only people that are just in my immediate area, where not only does it have the ability to deliver exercise programming with all of the exercises done on video with instruction and all of the program mapped out, but you can also do your nutrition tracking and your hydration tracking and before and after photos and all these different things that allow me to work with someone remotely, or in even a hybrid situation where they may come to me, get an evaluation and say, okay, here's your program, where you can follow on your own and just follow the app. And a lot of the people that are coming to me are the people that say, I want to exercise, I'm going to exercise, I just don't know what to do. And so that's where I can kind of give the direction to somebody who just needs to know what to do. I don't necessarily have to stand over them to make sure that they're doing it, because they are disciplined enough to do that. They just need the direction. And that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking to push out in the next 6 to 12 months.
Oh, I love that. You're always thinking, and we always have to grow. We always have to keep moving with what, I love that you're doing that. I'm going to say this really quick, but I'm actually on an app. So if somebody wants to work with me and take a spin class, and you have a stationary bike at home, you can take a class. You can go to TurboFit, TURBO app, just TurboFit app, and scroll down, look for DIGs spin classes, cycle classes, and you'll see you can take a cycle class with me either live, look on their schedule, or anything that's archived. Anyway, I had to get that in because you just reminded me, and I never talk about that on my show, that people can actually work with me on this app. But I love the idea of an app. I think it's big, and it's a great way for people, especially since the pandemic and people got, and everything shut down. All right. So your website is, say it again. Did you say it?
It's pretty simple. It's just my name. It's Eric Dagati, EricDagati.com.
Perfect. And final words, just final thought, word, phrase, anything to leave my audience with.
There's no magic pill. There's no magic workout or exercise. That it really comes down to what you will tolerate and what you set up as your non-negotiable habits. And then keep an honest checklist with yourself, going back and looking at those 3 big things. Or even if you have another system like Debbie, you mentioned with the circle, is really elegant in terms of just kind of knowing where you're at and understand it's dynamic, that life happens. It's going to change. We are not cyborgs or robots, and that sometimes my fitness can be a little higher on the scale. And sometimes it may have to take a back seat because I have to spend more time on my business or my family, or I may just need more time to reset. And so that's okay. And just knowing where that balance is helps people realize that it's really our decision and we're not broken. And we don't have to rely on some magic tool or pill or gadget or any of those things, that we have really the ability to change ourselves at any given moment. And what you can do with that information is the most powerful thing in terms of giving you a robust and vibrant life.
Well said. So true. Well said. Take Eric's advice, everybody. I want to thank you, Eric, and I want to thank you, the audience, for listening today. And I want you to remember to keep going out and finding those conversations like the one we had today that connect to a healthier you. All right. Bye, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks so much. Bye.